Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with
Oh, thanks, Matt. We will start with item 1.3, approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the agenda is approved. Item 1.4 is receive a presentation by MGT Community Engagement Session as part of the Master Facility Plan. This is a non-action item. All right, Mr. Anderson, would you like to introduce our guests?
Yeah, I'd love to. Mac, do we have them? Oh, there they are. All right, so we've got our friends from MGT. This is our third of three kind of virtual introductions of MGT to the community. And I don't have their names memorized and my eyesight is not gonna make it across the room. So we've got Rob, Daniel, and Lance with us. Thanks, gentlemen, for being here. Like I said, they've done 2 other meetings already, and essentially today's meeting purpose, just like the last 2, is to make everyone who's listening and who sees this aware of what MGT is doing, where they are in their process, what the next steps are, because we are starting to near the end. We have some more, we got some more stuff to do, but we're getting close to the end of this process. But those next steps are pretty vital to completion. So they're gonna give some information and then give opportunity for any questions. They love questions, and I told them you will not disappoint. So we're gonna listen to them, and they've even, Matt, and you're gonna love this, Matt. They have a platform for how to submit questions. So all during the meeting or during the thing, you can be sending in those questions. All right. So yeah, your computer, your phone. So we'll get you some questions tonight, fellas. So I'll turn the time over as Lance looks like he's unmuted, so I'm guessing he's going first.
Oh, well, hello. My name is Lance Richards, and I've been involved in education, public education for a little over 33 years. And, you know, I've joined MDT, and what we are is we're school people here to help kids and communities. And so we're very excited about this opportunity to work with Elko County and to now communicate directly with your board.
Go ahead, Daniel. Kick us off.
Absolutely. So good evening, everyone. Again, thank you so much for allowing us to be here and take some time out of your board meeting and really kind of share with you where we're going and how we're supporting all the great things happening at ECSD, and hopefully we're able to kind of get the understanding and buy-in as talked about to really make you a part of this presentation and make you a part of the process that goes into a facilities master plan. So before we get started, I want to make sure that I can see. Let me see. Can you all see our presentation? Let's see. Oh,
We see it.
Pulling it up for us.
Yep, I'm trying to pull it up. There we go.
Perfect.
If I can get it to start, we'll be in good shape. There we go.
There we go. So a little recognition for some mascots there, and then we'll go ahead. Rob, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself as
Sure,
well.
absolutely. My name is Rob Tanner. I'm a director of Education Solutions Group for MGT Consulting and the project director or the point of contact for this project. My background has been in construction and project management for the last 30 years, with better than a decade spent in a large school district as their facilities and operations director. And then I'll pass it back to you've kind of heard from Lance, and so I'll pass it back to you, Daniel.
Absolutely. Well, just quickly to introduce myself, my name is Daniel Dominguez. I'm coming from from Austin, Texas, but I have served as a consultant with MGT for about, about 3-4 months, primarily working within market analysis, community engagement pieces. Before my time with MGT, I worked in about 5 to 6 years within higher education spaces, primarily within private and public institutions, kind of engaging them within that town and government relationships. And so I'm excited to be utilizing that expertise as well as the two gentlemen with me to support this and really create a great holistic process that goes into this facilities master plan. So great, now that we got our welcome and introductions out of the way, as it's been mentioned many a times, truly this opportunity is to provide you all with context, with transparency. We pride ourselves at MGT with, again, creating that space and that voice where you all are a part of the process that we are implementing. And so we'll go a little bit into some of the methodology and kind of highlight these 6 components to it all. As was mentioned before, there's going to be some opportunity for Q&As. Anything that you'd like to clarify, anything that you want us to kind of provide more of an understanding to, there is an opportunity to do that. So before we begin, again, just to kind of get you all prepped for that, we utilize Poll Everywhere. So if you have a mobile device, a laptop, anything with you that provides any type of communication, you can go into a browser and go to pollev.com/MGT Consulting 3. That will prompt you into our interface from a web perspective, or which is the most convenient for all of us usually, is to text MGT Consulting 3 to 22333. Again, it will prompt you to kind of enter into our interface, and you'll kind of see that it's related to it. And so at any point during our presentation, if you have questions, we'll be able to capture those in real time. And then at the end, we'll be able to kind of sift through those and kind of answer those as they come in. But we try to give that as an opportunity so that you're not having to wait at the very end to do so. Well, great. Well, then we'll go ahead and dive into our methodology. So within our facilities master plan, we analyze all this data and all the things that come into this information that we receive through a quantitative and qualitative perspective, right? Everything from quantitative, from enrollment projections to assessments to creating a grading scale. That is all that quantitative analysis that really kind of dives into those deeper meanings. And then that qualitative analysis and that data point is more for telling that story, right? So we get a chance to do this through community engagement sessions. We interview different staff and district leadership, as well as community partners that allow us to really kind of create that story. Obviously, we are not there every single day with you all. And so it's really a great understanding for us to know that those data numbers kind of have a link to those who are doing this work every single day. And so then that goes into our 6 components.
I was just going to say, Daniel, we kind of like to say that as we do these facility master plans, that it's a bit of a math problem, and math hasn't changed, since Archimedes' time, and so that sometimes is the easy part. The hard part is that that political science essay that's wrapped up inside that math, and so that's where as you get into this process, we're really need that public engagement on how to proceed and what's best fit for you as a community and as a school district.
Absolutely. Appreciate that, Rob. And that's why we have a full team so that we can kind of see it from all those different perspectives. So as I mentioned, there's 6 components to our project methodology. These are in no way linear, and we do that very intentionally to make sure that we are creating that momentum, we're creating that progress to know that once we're starting in that project initiation phase, it's all systems go, and we allow ourselves to kind of work fluidly within programmatic reviews and enrollment projections, again, just to make sure that we're not having to stop and start each chapter of this facility master plan, but that we're able to kind of create the momentum and progress into, again, a holistic view and narrative of what this process really looks like. And so our first connection to you all and the project, the master plan that kind of starts it all, is that project initiation, right? So we are just looking at those goals and kind of just getting down to the most basic form of what do we want to succeed at the end of all this, right? What do those line of communications look like? How are we creating updates? How are we making sure that we are consistently creating that line of narrative and that line of communication with you all? There's that work plan and project schedule that's established. We want to make sure, again, that we are being as transparent as possible about what we're working on, when we're working on it, and when you were expected to kind of get that complete picture. I will talk a little bit about this a little bit more, and Rob will certainly mention where we are in that progress. But right now it's looking like we'll be complete with the project in November. And so as we move from project initiation, we look into programmatic review. And so this again is that another piece of qualitative analysis and qualitative data. So we conduct interviews with school district leaders and staff to really develop that understanding of what the educational programs are, really get an understanding of who ECSD is, right? We want to make sure that we are not just creating a best practice or cookie cutter narrative for every single school district that we go to, but we want to make sure that it's so mirrored of what you all see day to day. And we want to make sure that this facilities master plan is something that you can utilize to kind of progress that school district forward, and not something that just sits on a table or a counter in a bookshelf that collects dust, right? And so we want those discussions to be fluid, and we want to make sure that we are utilizing those discussions to really evaluate and establish those standards. And that's what we utilize to assess going forward on into the project.
And so enrollment projections is a big part of what we do. Obviously, as a school district, a lot is dependent upon what your enrollment is for funding, from staffing decisions. And so having an accurate picture of what that is very important. We use just like a weather person who uses different models. I know if you don't have too many hurricanes in Nevada, but if you ever seen like the hurricane forecast, there's always these little lines out there where it could go left, it could go right, or it may go up the middle. And so they have different models. And we tend to do the same thing. So we have 4 models that we use. We use a linear regression model. We use an average decrease or increase in enrollment model. We use we used to call it a birth rate model, but now we're looking at student age of population model, where we're looking at what your student age of population was in your school district and what your capture rate was in the past, and then moving that forward, taking that capture rate and looking at the projections of the students' ages of population in the future, what those projections are, and applying your capture rate to that. For some reason, I thought that the fourth one went right out my head. But anyway, we use the 4 models, and then we average those 4 models into kind of an average models that we feel like is more targeted at what your population trends in your county are. And then the capacity and utilization, we want to definitely look at what is the capacity of each of your schools, where they are utilized now, what's those trends, what they're going to look like, using those enrollment projections 5 years from now and 10 years from now, so that you can make educated, smart decisions about where to spend your capital dollars. Because we all know that in public school systems, we don't have all the money that we need, and so we have to be smart with where we use the money and where it's going to impact the biggest need.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rob. And so again, just diving back into it. So moving from that aspect of the project, we go into facility assessments. And so as we look at the facilities, we are looking at them from 4 different components. Our building condition is everything from flooring, HVAC, HVAC. We're looking at safety. We're looking at accessibility and ADA compliance, from sidewalks to doors. Anything that creates that building condition that's a positive one, but also one that is secure within each school. And so then we go into education suitability or functionality. And so this is everything that has to do with enhancing learning, from having the proper equipment in an art studio to utilizing the spaces that are most in need of utilizing the spaces for what they're intended, right? A lab or a music hall or a art studio, making sure that everything is utilized in a way that is creating that enhancement of education. Then we go into grounds condition. So what does the surrounding areas of the school look like? How can we make sure that we are providing that safety again, but also that aspect of what is the overall environment of entering into that school? What does that look like? And then lastly, that technology readiness. So this is everything from what a teacher might need to make sure that, again, that enhancement of education is happening. We know that education is going to be with us now, and it is certainly something that we utilize to improve education. And so rather than utilizing it as something that hinders us, how can we make sure that teachers are prepared and staff members are prepared to properly use technology that truly enhances that system and enhances the school district. And so as you can see, there's 4 different components to it. Thank you, Rob. There's different components to it. Again, starting obviously in that 90 percentile, new or like new, and then decreasing from there from good, fair, poor, and unsatisfactory. And then another final piece for that qualitative assessment data is our public input. So obviously what we're doing now, again, we're wanting to make sure that we are providing a series of virtual community meetings to explain our facilities master planning process. Again, that allows us to kind of provide that transparency with you all, get that clarification and that understanding so that you can ask us questions and again, get some more of those details that might not be in that everyday aspect of that facility master plan at the end of this. There's also some series of in-person community meetings. So tentatively, all 3 of us will be joining you all in Elko the week of September 19th. And so we'll be able to engage with the community regarding some of that data that's been compiled from the facilities plan. And then we have a survey. So that is similar to the in-person community engagement meetings. And so typically we try to provide both as means to engage. So typically if you've done the survey or if you've missed the community engagement, either or will suffice, as those are pretty one and the same when it comes to what we ask and what we try to detail within both of those.
And we'll be, we're going to have 7 different in-person community meetings when we're there. We're still working on exact locations and times with the school district, but it's going to be that week of September 19th. I think we're doing one in Elko, we're doing one in Jackpot, one in Owie, one in Wells, one in Spring Creek, one in Carlin, and West Wendover, I think, is the last one.
Absolutely. And so that covers our process, our methodology. Again, I appreciate you all for giving us this time, but again, we want to make sure that this time is for you all. And so again, there's an opportunity for you all to engage in our Q&A. Again, it's a pollev.com/MGT consulting 3. If you're accessing this from a web page or from a laptop, but primarily if you're able to utilize your phone or mobile cellular phone, you can text MGT consulting 3 to the number 22333. Again, we've had multiple communication engagement sessions up until this point. There was one on August 1st, and there was also one on September 27th as well. And then we are wrapping up with August 9th, which is today. And then Rob, as we are kind of getting some questions into our poll everywhere, would you like to share a little bit about where we are in our process now?
Absolutely. So we have we've already been on site and assessed all of the schools. We are right now in the middle of compiling all of that data, putting together the final touches on the enrollment projections and the demographic review, the capacity and utilization report. And so we're compiling all that information into what I like to call kind of a findings and themes draft, so that when we show up in September the 19th, that we have all of the data available to be able to share at these community meetings. And that's kind of the goal, is to be able to present all that data and then kind of get the reaction from your community to see, what are the most important things that they would like to see those capital dollars used on.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned before, that project completion is set to be November. So I'm quite excited and quite confident that we will have a fantastic plan to you all, and certainly some opportunities as we progress from here on to make sure that happens. And so I see one of our first question is the technology readiness component, is it infrastructure only? So is it hard lines, wireless, or is also equipment a part of that assessment?
It's actually less of the hardware and more of does a teacher have the tools they need to teach in that 21st century environment? Now, that being said, if you don't have that hardware there, if the bandwidth isn't large enough, and when we were on site and we talk to principals and we talk to staff members about, do you have any issues with whenever, if you're doing state testing or you're doing something where everyone is online at the same time, do you have that bandwidth? Do you need to split it up? Does teachers, are they able to stream videos or stream to their students? Those type of things. So making sure that they have the projectors in their rooms, do they have the technology they need, again, to give that 21st century instruction.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. This one is detailed, so I want to make sure I read this verbatim. With the mining industry making up a large part of the local economy, is MGT considering or taking into account the cyclical nature of mining and the potential impact to the makeup and density of the population within the county?
Absolutely. And so when we part of what we do is a demographic analysis. And so in that demographic analysis, one of the big pieces is looking at employment and employment opportunities, both past, present, and what is projected. Obviously, none of us have a crystal ball, but there are some indicators that we look at when doing that demographic report. And so, in our final data, when we gather, you will see a picture of, a vision of what the employment opportunities looks like, how they are now, what's the breakdown, what's the largest employers, where there's going to be contraction, where there might be expansion in the future. So absolutely, that is taken into account as we look at both, like you said, the cyclical nature of that, but also, when we start to look at enrollment projections and population changes in the future, we're looking at that as well.
In recent visits, Rob, I know you've gotten a chance to visit. Are there any indications as to priorities or priority properties, just based on those kind of that first walkthrough?
I don't think it would be appropriate for me to my gut reaction to say that. I was on site as part of the team that came in and did the assessments, but we came in as a team. There were, I think, 4 of us. And so we went to different sites. So I haven't seen every site. So I don't think it would be good for me to, at this date, to say that. I will just say that as we have this data come in, there will be some coalescing of themes and findings that we'll be able to share.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And then this goes back to some of that assessment piece for facilities. So technology readiness. How do we determine the technology that teachers need? Are these determined by, essentially, who are these tools determined by?
Well, part of the conversation when we talked about that programmatic review, so part of that conversation with district leaders and district instructors was about technology readiness and the tools and the piece. So we have kind of some national standards that we use, but we, like said before, we want to make sure we tailor it to the specific districts. And so we create a rubric based on those conversations and based on that best practices framework to come up with, like I said, a guide for us to assess when we're on site.
Absolutely. And this kind of refers back to that programmatic review aspect of it. What goes into choosing the staff or leadership that we speak to? What processes is that when it comes to kind of utilizing those interviews?
Sure. Well, obviously, we want to talk. We want to talk to the decision makers in the school district, and then also, they point us who else to talk to as well. So we're looking at folks in curriculum, whether it be CTE, whether it be ESL, or mathematics department, social studies department, whatever your curriculum leaders are. We're part of this, or we're part of, and or part of also giving us names of folks to reach out to as well.
Sure. Let's see. We have time for just let's see, a couple more. So Rob, can you talk to us a little bit how age might play a part in rating facilities assessment, particularly those that are, 3 or 4 decades, in? Does that play a piece in, the fairness, or how does that play a part in really assessing those facilities?
Sure. Age does play a piece. It's interesting from a construction management, background that I come from. I have seen some rather old buildings that have great bones, that have great, like the saying, they don't make them like they used to, and that's very true. And there's a little bit of a history lesson in our construction of our schools, depending on when they were built. Pre-World War II schools, they're still in use, and there are many across the country, are very sturdy, rock solid type of buildings. And then you have kind of the baby boom buildings that were kind of pushed up pretty quickly because of the large amount of students that were coming. And then you have kind of those 60s and 70s buildings that were kind of relegates of the Cold War era, when they had interior classrooms and small windows and things like that. But the biggest piece is really in the suitability of an education space, because if any school built before, say, 1980, and maybe even a little bit closer to 1990, but I'd say at least 1980, they had classrooms only. They didn't have pull-out areas for that intense instruction, for that tutoring space. They didn't have areas for teachers to have PLCs. They didn't have health clinics and isolation rooms and that type of thing. And so, education has really changed over the years, and the older buildings just weren't designed for that. Now, they're still good at what they were designed for, and a lot of them are in good shape, and districts have spent lots of money to keep them in the shape. They replaced roofs and HVAC systems, but that suitability piece is probably the biggest ding that an older school will probably get, just based upon it wasn't designed to operate like with modern education.
Absolutely. Great. And the last question I have, assuming that we've used up our time, what type of trends in education, and maybe what are some things that we've offered as guiding updates or construction to facilities assessments, or really just all those assessments for that matter, when it comes to our facilities master plan?
Sure. And it's hard to say, but we, because districts are different, it depends upon, what your funding level is going to be, or do you feel like a bond, if you don't have a whole lot of funding, will a bond pass? Do you have declining enrollment or increasing enrollment? What's your deferred capital improvement look like? Typically, as we do these assessments, those pieces kind of show themselves as they come out. We start to see, themes around the buildings. Obviously, the first thing that we are always going to recommend is going to be have a safe, secure, working facility, and then go from there. And so when we look at where to spend your dollars, it really then becomes what the priority is for that district. In light of trends around the country, safety has always lately been a big trend as far as putting in, vestibules in buildings as you come in. So you have kind of that, that airlock area when you enter a building, having card access in and out of a building instead of keys, so that if staff changes or keys are lost, you can turn cards off instead of have to rekey the entire building. Cameras, those sorts of things. That's probably over the last, especially the last 6 months, but even before then, has been a pretty big theme. But then also with pandemic, I would say virtual learning. I mean, wow, did school districts, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know. And I know Lance is I call him a recovering superintendent down there. He has some PTSD, but that pandemic and that quick shift to virtual learning and having room to isolate and that type of thing, so that you can continue to teach the kids that you can teach.
And Daniel, I might add, we recognize that these buildings are community assets, and in many cases, they are the community center for that community and town. And so it's important as we step through this process, as we look at the suitability and we look at the functionality of these buildings, how can we help a district? How can we help building leaders and community leaders step up and make the best decisions to help that community with that valued asset? We spoke to the older buildings and that sort of thing. Many times we very much are in love with that old gymnasium or that old cafeteria. And so how do we help school systems make these decisions that are impactful for student learning, but also protect that community asset?
Absolutely. Thank you both, Lance and Rob, for giving us that insight, and for you all for, again, engaging with us in this process. That is our time. We turn it back to you all.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from the board that you haven't madly typed away? All right. Well, if not, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for your work for the district and helping us put this all together. We appreciate it.
So much.
Great. See you soon.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for
Yeah,
taking
we'll
the
see you
time.
soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, we will move on to item 1.5, input from the public. This is a period devoted to comments by the general public, if any, and discussion of those comments. In the interest of privacy and due process, the public is requested to not raise personnel issues except in a legally noticed closed personnel session of the board. Comments are limited to 3 consecutive minutes. A speaker's time may not be reserved, divided, apportioned, or deferred. No action may be taken upon a matter raised under this item of the agenda until the matter itself has been included specifically on an agenda as an item upon which action will be taken. I have a couple of public comments. Susan, would you like to start with this one?
Okay, I'll time myself here. Board trustees, this letter has been written in support of making the 2022-23 school year a 4-day week similar to other schools in our county. The opinions and examples used in deciding to support this initiative comes from the perspective of educators, parents, and students. As educators, we can see the benefits of a 4-day week through different lenses across all grade levels. In the higher grades, students often miss class time for sporting events outside of school, events that also strain to our small pool of substitute teachers. The lack of subs impacts the classroom in other ways. When teachers have to be absent without prior notice and a sub cannot be found, a teacher is pulled from another class or classes get split up and absorbed into different classes. This means many students across multiple rooms are affected by the absence of one teacher. This does not even account for teachers that must get subs for medical appointments outside of Elko. Having Friday off to take care of appointments and to participate in sports would help alleviate short staffing problems, as well as teachers having Friday available to make sure every detail is ready for the following week. Not to mention getting extra time throughout the 4-day week would allow teachers to slow down and delve deeper into topics or projects. From a parent perspective, there is evidence that this schedule meets the needs of students already. Within Elko County, different schools have been using the 4-day schedule for a few years. There must be evidence that there is no loss of learning from the adjusted schedule. Lastly, there is a value in a student's perspective to this change as well. Though not all students may have the same reasons to support a 4-day week, some of the more common ones included using the extra time at home to work on assignments and projects for school, participating in sporting events, spending time at work to free up time after school for studying, as well as having more time to decompress and recuperate from the work week. Thank you for your time and consideration. We hope all board members will support teachers, parents, and students by changing the schedule to a 4-day week. Submitted by Melissa Leon, Mary Hines, Amber Reyes, and Deborah Ramon.
Thank you, Susan. All right, we have a couple other requests. One is from Wildy Bruff. Would you like to come up?
No. I don't want to talk.
Okay. All right, well then don't come and talk. Well then you just join us and smile. That's fine. All right. And then we're glad you're here. Well, you'll have another opportunity at the end, so we will give you that opportunity. And then I've got one from Shannon, but Shannon, I see this is related to item 2.2, transportation. Are you okay if you give your comment during that? I will ask for that during item 2.2. Is that all right? Okay. All right. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a comment at this time? All right,
Chair, if I may,
please.
please,
Go ahead,
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
Thought I had that on. There we go. I know item 2.2 has the word transportation in it, but I think what she has to say has nothing to do at all with 2.2. So
Okay, all right.
now is probably a better time
Okay,
for
well,
it.
that's fine. I am not well acquainted with what you need to talk about. So I guess Shannon, come on up. Yeah, absolutely. We'll get you a mic. Just know you've only got 3 minutes to sit, so.
I can talk in front of 100 students, but not in front of adults, so bear with me.
Some of us are just big.
Elko County School District, excuse me, board members. My name is Shannon Glasscock, and I am from the Wine Cup Gamble Ranch in northeastern Nevada. My husband and I have 5 children, in which 4 are enrolled in your school district. I come today representing the many hardworking families on the ranch. We currently have 27 children total, from infant to high school, which live within our 3 ranch divisions. Our ultimate goal is to see transportation to Wells Combined School for all 3 divisions. However, before this can be approved, the school boundaries would have to be changed. This is why I'm here today to present the need to change a boundary. I've been told by many that this would be impossible, yet I myself have served on a school board. And when a legitimate need is presented, was in the best interest of the children and made sense to all stakeholders, it only took a vote. We would like to see the 3 divisions put into 1 school zone. Currently, the Wine Cup Division and Independence Valley Division are within the Wells Combined School boundaries. However, our Eastern Gamble Division is separated out into the West Wendover boundary. This creates problems when our families may move from one division to another, depending on the season or need on the ranch. In the past, this wasn't much of an issue, as employment mostly consisted of single individuals. But since the new owner and management, it has become a family atmosphere in which we now have many ranch families residing on each division. To keep this type of culture and atmosphere on the ranch, the stability, accessibility, and excellence in education is important to our parents. I believe Wells Combined School provides these qualities and characteristics that best fit our ranch children's needs. Most importantly, it is the closest school to all 3 divisions. And secondly, it provides educational consistency and stability to our youth. One may ask, why don't the families on the Gamble Division just file a variance to attend Wells Combined Schools? This could easily be done and approved. Yet, for transportation to even be considered and approved by your administration, their hands are tied until the Gamble is put in within the Wells Combined School boundary. The importance for getting this boundary changed is ultimately the accessibility to district transportation. This last year, all the ranch families were independently driving their children to Wells to attend school. The Elko County School District reimburses 17 cents a mile, yet it costs 33 cents a mile, not including maintenance, tires, and time.
Shannon, their time is up. And
Okay.
I appreciate that you have typed this out and given it to the board so that we can all look at it.
Okay.
And perhaps you can back at the end and share some more of your comments. We've got more time at the end.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I will just say we appreciate that you have driven all the way here. So thank you for being involved. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a comment at this time?
Madam Chair, if I may,
Two brief things. For the ladies that wrote the 4-day work week, I encourage you, if you're not already planning on visiting the entire or staying for the entire board meeting, at least stay until board comments and superintendent comments. And Ms. Glasscock, do you by chance know the voting precinct for the Gamble portion of the? It appears to be 37, but I just am, or sorry, 39. But if that can be confirmed, I would appreciate that. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
I think Mr. Higbee can probably get that answer for you pretty fast. We were looking at some stuff earlier today and he was using a district map, so we'll get it for you real quick.
39, thank you.
All right. Okay, we will move to action items now. Item 2.1 is receipt, review, and possible approval of the Elko County School District Test Security Plan for school year 22-23.
Oh, it turned itself on when I set it down. Perfect. All right. You have on the agenda there our test security plan for this year. Per NRS statute, it's something that we have to present every year. The wording is something that the board agrees is adopted and put into place. So it's something that we like to put in front of you as a board to take a look at. Like I said, it's something that we've done on an annual basis for quite a while. There are some minor revisions to the plan from previous years. Excuse me, but really nothing too significant. Other than I decided to, because our plan in past years has referenced the state plan numerous times, I thought I might as well just include it as an appendix. So it's all one document together. So that's really the most significant addition is, and actually because the state plan is so lengthy, it's actually the majority of the document that's on there is just a copy and paste of the state security plan. And then there's also a couple other items on there just related to assessments, the annual state assessment calendar with some testing windows and dates on that. And then just a document that's provided by NDE that kind of gives an overview of all of the state and federally required assessments that we give and every district in the state gives. So that's just a little bit of history.
All right, any questions from the board?
Of course.
Go, Matt. Go for Matt.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Smith. On testing, this is not just testing of, okay, kids, we're going to now test on what we learned last week on a spelling test, correct? Can you say what kind of testing this is? Yep,
absolutely. Yeah, so this is more related to what we call high stakes testing, smarter balanced SBAC testing, WIDA testing, which is for our EL students, English language learners, ACT testing for our secondary students. So it's the higher stakes, either state or federally required testing. Yeah, not classroom assessments, none of that, what we call medium stakes stuff.
And just as a follow-up, how long does it typically take to train the educator on the security methods involved in our testing security stuff?
Sure. So, I mean, it varies a little bit from assessment to assessment, of course, depending on what the requirements are. But in my experience as a principal, it's generally something that's done an hour, maybe an hour and a half, I would say. You guys agree with that? Is that right?
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, any other questions? Okay, any other questions from anyone else on the board?
You answered my question. Most of these are just for understanding purposes are mandated through state and federal
requirements.
Yeah, it's not that we're having these here on our own. It's that they come from above the actual district itself.
Absolutely. Yep, that's correct.
Thank you.
And all of those tests are attached to accountability ratings. We are required to participate in them, and they're part of the normal school year. It's been a little wishy-washy the last couple of years, COVID stuff, but yeah, that's what this test security plan does not refer to every test we do. It's specifically to those tests that he mentioned.
All right, what's the will of the board?
Chair, move to approve the Elko County School District Test Security Plan for school year 2022-2023. Second.
Thank you. We have a motion, a second. Any other discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the motion carries. Item 2.2 is review and possible deletion of policy EDAA, student transportation management, district-owned buses for possible action.
Madam Chair, if I may, items 2.02, 2.03, 2.04, 2.05, and 2.06 are pretty similar generally in nature. And if it's the will of the board and permission with the chair, I'd like to try to address most of these, if not all of those, collectively.
What's the will of the board? Would you like to address them all at once or individually?
I'm okay with it.
We can do it all at once.
Okay. Susan, you okay with
That's
that?
fine.
All right, well, then let's go items 2.2 through 2.6. We will address them all at once and use that in one motion to be more efficient with our time. We all like that.
Absolutely.
So
Thank you.
let's go to questions or discussion on items 2.2 through 2.6. And just so that they're in the record, I can read 2.3 through 6. 2.3 is receipt, review, and possible approval of proposed changes to policy EBBC, buildings and grounds management, safety emergency drills. 2.4 is receipt, review, and possible approval of proposed changes to policy CD, administrative evaluations. 2.05 is receipt, review, and possible approval of proposed changes to policy CF, policy accessibility and distribution. And 2.06 is receipt, review, and possible approval of proposed changes to policy CBA, qualifications and duties of the superintendent, just so everyone is on the same page on what we're discussing. So questions or discussion from the board on items 2.2 through 2.6.
With us grouping them, I just want everyone to know that I did read through them, did look at them, did look at the changes. I do agree with Matt as well. So I'm glad that you did that. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Anderson, is there anything of major change in here? In reading through it, I've got my notes. EDAA seems to be incomplete. It just kind of fell off. It disappeared. EBBC seems to just be updating the policy appropriately, making proper classification of this under section J. I mean, it seems that this is really just housekeeping.
Yes, so inherent in policy CBA, which is actually one of the ones we're changing today. One of my duties is to make sure our policies are reflect current practices and are up to date with NRS. And sometimes we come across that on our own, and sometimes a lovely board member in a green sweater lets us know that something's amiss. And so we just, together we make sure our policies are accurate. And so and I've got more that I'm not done checking out yet, but so basically what you're looking at with all 5 of these is they've all been changed. Some is just like language, like the district needs to be a capital D instead of a lowercase d. And then sometimes we find things in there that maybe were practiced back in 2008 when it was implemented, but now we do things a little differently. And so we change it to reflect what we do because otherwise we're not in compliance with the policy. So the majority of what you see in all 5 of those, well, I guess the first one, we're just Xing because not only was it an incomplete, it was like a sentence fragment of a policy. Additionally, the NRS cited in there isn't NRS anymore. Like those don't exist. So nobody really knew what that one was about, couldn't figure it out, and the NRS didn't exist. So we just decided to fold it up and send it off into the sunset. And then the last 4 are all more of what I was explaining before. So if you see anything in the red line that you're like, well, hey, that's more than just a word change. That's like you deleted a whole sentence and included a new sentence, and you'd like an explanation of what I mean by that, I'm happy to do that. But there wasn't anything major. Possibly the only one that I feel like is maybe to help you understand why I changed it was in policy CD. There was a sentence that indicated that on an annual basis, I would come to you and I would recommend what we would do with administrators, and we would discuss their salary advancement. And that's just not the way our management works. We evaluate our administrators. We we decide whether or not they're going to stay as administrators and or move on or that sort of thing. And the salary is just, I mean, it's very formulaic. It's based off of a salary schedule and role ratios and things like that. So there isn't any really decision for the board, nor am I making recommendations because the board doesn't make those decisions. So more accurately, I put in there that I'll let you know that we're done with it. And if you are able to request to see a specific administrator's evaluation, if you would like to, and we will share that with you if you are inclined. But that's probably the one that has the most kind of substantive change. The rest of it is all very just minute, but making it look neat, clean, and reflective of what we do as practice.
Thank you. And Paul, if I may, I apologize, Madam Chair. Policy CD, the language that you just discussed was the biggest concern that I have. However, in addition to your comments, it also seems to be more in compliance with current state guidance regarding closed personnel sessions. Unless it's an executive of the department, rarely is that kind of public evaluation. So that's why I felt that it was fine to kind of lump them all together.
All right, any other questions?
I just appreciate you updating the policies. They needed a little refresh. So it's good to get those going, especially when they were so old.
I appreciate lovely board members in green sweaters who helped me. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I may, I move to delete policy EDAA, student transportation management, district-owned buses, approve proposed changes to policy EBBC, buildings and grounds management, safety emergency drills, including renaming this policy to JGCD, approve proposed changes to policy CD, administrative evaluations, approve proposed changes to policy CF, policy accessibility and distribution, and approve proposed changes to policy CBA, qualifications and duties of the superintendent. These are outlined on our agenda as items 2.02, 2.03, 2.04, 2.05, and 2.06, with the minor change there of policy JGCD now being what was formerly EBBC.
All right, do we have a second?
Well, second.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and that very lengthy motion carries. Item 2.7 is receipt, review, and possible approval of proposed new policy CN, racially discriminatory identifiers. Mr. Anderson, would you like to give us a preface
Sure.
on this one?
Absolutely. So what you have there is a proposed new policy. We are required by the state to have this policy. We're actually about a month or so behind, but the policy police have not come after us yet. And we kind of have our good reasons for holding off a little bit, making sure we do it the right way. So we have a new policy here. This comes from, it's related to NRS 388.045. I think I got that right, as well as AB 88, Assembly Bill 88, which you will, if you were to compare the wording in this policy with the NRS and the bill, you would accuse me of copy and paste, and you would be correct, because that's what the bill says we have to do. The bill says we will not, and read the whole thing. So that is what our policy states. To help some people out, because there was a lot of concern when we first posted this, that this meant that this was step one in getting rid of a couple of school mascots that we have. We also attached along with this agenda item a letter from the Tamok tribe, as well as our tribe up in Hawaii, the Shoshone Paiute tribe. Shoshone Paiute, yep. They both have sent resolutions or letters of approval's not the right word, but of support of us keeping the names that we currently have for the Elko High School Indians and for the Hawaii Braves. Part of the bill and of the NRS includes language that basically says really the essence of AB 88 was not to decide who is being discriminatory and who's not, but it was to get communities to come together. And if there were things that were of concern, to get people talking about it and decide, like, is that something that needs to change or not? And so we've kind of done that. We've got together with our community organizations, with the tribes, and come to agreements, and we're working together. And so the policy is there because it's required by statute. And we're not making any changes to any mascots at this time.
Thank you for that explanation. Any questions from the board on that item?
I move to approve new policy CN, racially discriminatory identifiers.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Madam Chair, I just want to reemphasize, as Mr. Anderson indicated, the NRS 388.045 subsection 2 does allow for the governing body to use names, logos, mascots, songs, or other identifiers if the board or governing body obtains approval. And I appreciate our partners with the Timok tribe as well as the Shoshone Paiute for allowing us to continue to use what I believe are historically relevant mascots. And I appreciate staff and their time in obtaining those approvals. If this were not legally required under NRS, I think we'd have a different discussion. And I appreciate that sometimes we just have to do what the state says we have to do. I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, all in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the motion carries. Item 2.8 is assign a board trustee to the strategic planning team.
Madam Chair, for expedience, I'd like to nominate Miss Susan Neal for the strategic planning team, but I didn't mean to steal your thunder, Mr. Anderson.
She is the lovely board member in the green sweater, first of all.
She is, and I apologize. I withdraw my motion until Mr. Anderson has had a chance to talk.
Oh, it's good to be loved, isn't it, Susan?
Yes, it is. Good to
So,
be green.
there's some background information within this agenda item, and for those who haven't seen it, I will read it for you. ECSD has partnered with an organization called K-12 Leadership Matters to engage in the process of developing a strategic plan. If you feel like you've heard the word strategic plan recently, you have, I believe, the Spring Creek Association is also going through a strategic plan process at the moment. This is a not uncommon thing for organizations to do. The strategic plan will contain actionable steps based on 3 to 5 critical high leverage goals that can guide the district for the next 5 years. One of the first steps in the process is the development of a planning team consisting of approximately 15 to 20 district personnel. Members of the planning team will meet 2 times per month from September through December. I will clarify, 2 times. It's 2 days back to back, so it's not like beginning of the month and end of the month or anything like that. It's 2 days in a row, 2 times. From September through December for working sessions facilitated by K-12 Leadership Matters, which will guide and support the planning team in creation of the district strategic plan. So sorry, I'm not part of the board. You as a board have discussed the need for goals, and I agree with the need for goals. And some of you have been itching to get some goals done. And so this is part of that process. It is a huge support in that process of developing some goals. This organization not only is going to help guide us through developing a strategic plan, but it's also going to serve to show NNRPDP how to guide people through doing a strategic plan, so they can also support us in the future as well as the other counties that benefit from their services. So this is kind of it's a good thing for a lot of people that we're doing this, but we definitely need it. Yeah, we've partnered with them. There was no requirement to have a board member. I was kind of told the pros and the cons of having a board member. And they said, depends how you feel about your board, CJ. And I said, well, I think I'd like a board member. And that goes for all of you. Any of you would be great on the committee, but we'd love to have a board member. And so as we've done usually in January when people get assigned to committees and that sort of thing, I would like to ask you to have one of you on the committee with us.
All right.
Oh, sorry, one other thing.
Okay.
This is totally unrelated to MGT. We heard from MGT on a long range facility plan and facility needs assessment, all that. That's very specifically about the physical capabilities of our facilities and that sort of thing. This is about the direction we want our district to head over the next 5 years and beyond. So totally unrelated, happening at the same time because I'm crazy. So yeah. Yep, we need it.
All right, thank you for that explanation. All right, Matt, would you like to formally nominate Susan and we will ask her if she accepts?
I'd be happy to. Thank you very much for the background and information, Mr. Anderson. I believe that Susan, in addition to being the lovely board member in the green sweater, as we have seen, I think that she is probably one of the most prepared board members that we have at the table. I appreciate her diligence, the fact that she does take the time to go through, I think, page by page, line by line, a little bit more diligently even than myself. And I didn't want to be nominated for anything. So not that I'm trying to say second fiddle or anything else, but no, I figured if I nominated you, then I would be able to hopefully avoid this. So Madam Chair, if I may, I would nominate Miss Susan Neal as the board trustee to the strategic planning team.
Susan, would you accept the nomination?
I do accept.
All right.
Second it.
Okay, well, I won't ask for a second then. Excellent. Is there any other discussion? All in favor of assigning Susan to be the trustee to the strategic planning team, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and congratulations, Susan. We know you will do great work. All right, item 2.9 is receipt, review, and possible approval for permission to go out to bid for the annual LP gas contract.
To give permission to go out to bid for the annual LP gas contract.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Stephen loves questions.
I'm gonna run.
All right, well, it looks like there's no discussion. All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and that's approved. Stephen, thank you for your presence. We will move to item 3.1, our consent agenda.
Glad you could get those steps in there, Stephen. Madam Chair, move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the consent agenda? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? All right, chair votes aye, and the consent agenda is approved. Item 4.1 is a report from our NASB director. Do we have any report from, let's see, who's our backup?
I have that information somewhere. I just need to find it real quick.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
I am not the backup, by the way. I just can tell you who is. And we can throw them under the bus.
Well, I can just tell you, since I am on the executive committee for NASB, our new executive director that took over is working hard to make good things happen. There's a training coming up shortly. It is September 9th and 10th. And I know we have at least one board member, possibly two, representing us, and we'll bring back information for the rest of the board. And is there anything else you found, Matt, while I talked?
We have a conference coming.
Yep.
Conference in November. I'll be sending information to the board.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Cassie. All right, if there's nothing else, Matt will let you off the hook. I think that's it.
Dr. Byers is off the hook too.
All right, that's it.
I'm just saying that.
I was
you
just
have
gonna
to be off
get
the hook too.
All right, here we go. Well, let's move to item 4.2, items from board members.
Go ahead, Dr. Byers.
Oh, you want me to go first? Is that what
Go ahead, go first.
First of all, I don't think I'm getting those emails, to be honest. I was going to get with you and see, we'll compare notes. First of all, sorry for my absence last week. I thought I'd have internet, so I'd be able to zoom in. So I suffered at Cedar Point riding roller coasters and whatnot. So I know, thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah, so the internet and the cell service there is not good. So if you're going to Cedar Point, don't count on internet. All right. You can count on great roller coasters though. Okay. The other thing, over the weekend, attended the Mybrary event, the former Elko County Library. That was pretty cool. The branding for that is fantastic. And just the changes that they're going to make. I didn't realize how many Oculus they have now. There's like a huge stack in there. So there's no reason why someone shouldn't be exploring VR and the workings of that too as well. So, and then we've got the Elko County Fair coming up. Kind of excited for that. So other than that, that's all I got. And I'll get on it to be the backup Nasby. He's always here. So
He is.
anyways, okay.
I think he would have been excited to have, known about the strategic planning too. And he may have fought you for that, that Susan, for the appointment. Madam Chair, if I may.
Please.
So first off, for the audience and for those that see how quickly we move through things sometimes, this is in no way an attempt to not be transparent. It truly is expedience. Of all of the items that we considered tonight, I don't believe there was a single thing that was in the administrative section of board docs for especially the 5 that we did. So the public information that you're seeing is the same stuff we're seeing, and that's why we expedite that. Or at least I shouldn't say we. I'm only speaking for myself. I just want to get through this because I'm sure you guys have other things to do. And if it's not that pressing for our students, we don't need to necessarily be missing out on time with our families for that. Collectively, we. So I wanted to be very clear on why sometimes I try to lump everything together. Next thing up for the board this morning, we had a debt management commission. And I was appointed to that debt management commission, which is the only reason I knew who the alternate was for the NASB. Unfortunately, I also was not getting those emails. So I found out about 24 hours ago, maybe a little bit less than that or more than that, that I had a meeting this morning at 10. However, it's twice a year and the debt management commission did approve our CIP, capital improvement plan, as well as our indebtedness report that this board itself approved at a previous meeting. They also approved indebtedness reports and CIPs for a number of agencies across the county. I'm happy to visit with anyone in regards to that if they would like more information. Specifically for ours, the commission was interested in knowing how we were going to handle the capital expenses now that we've lost the pay-as-you-go funding. And I greatly appreciate Ms. Julie Smith for being there. Thank you for your comments, Julie. And we kind of said, well, we're evaluating as we go. So I shouldn't say we, Julie did, that she, kind of spoke for the district. So I appreciate that. That was the debt management plan side of things. Also on Saturday, in addition to the Mybrary, was the event for Spring Creek Elementary, the pancake feed. I greatly appreciate Cooks and the rest of the team that helped out with putting that fundraiser on. I hope that it was successful, but it's great to see community coming together, especially our small businesses coming together to support the school district. Finally, I know that Mr. Anderson will be addressing the 4-day school week with communities of Elko and Spring Creek in his comments, though I wanted to say that I appreciate the comments and the information that has been provided so far, and I encourage anyone with input to share it. This will potentially impact our entire community, from students, parents, teachers, staff, and bus drivers to businesses, service organizations, and governments. I see a lot of potential in moving to a 4-day school week, though I have major concerns regarding those students who do not have the resources others may, including safe environments, adequate food security, and appropriate places to study. And I'm also very concerned about the impact to our bus drivers. I look forward to seeing how these concerns can be addressed. Thank you, Madam Chair. I conclude my comments.
All right, thank you. Ira, have you got anything?
Yep. Just to show support for Shannon Glasscock and her cause to get a school bus to go back and forth between Montello and Wells. At the risk of dating myself, there used to be a school bus go back and forth between Montello and Wells, and high school kids rode it because the grammar school was open in Montello like it is now. And there were a few kids that rode it. It made for a long day. They'd get on that thing pretty early in the morning and get off pretty late at night, but yep, I'd like to see that as an agenda item. Discuss it.
I'd also like to see this come back before the board as an agenda item. Thank you.
Third support.
All right. Well, you took one of my items, so that's good. All right, anything else, Ira? All right, Susan.
I think I could say ditto right down the line for a lot of things that were said. So I have a STARS update. Unfortunately, the successfunds.com/ECSD stars, we don't really have any contributions at this point. So I drafted a letter and I'm not sure if I'm going to walk it around the town. I'm not sure yet how to distribute that, but I'm going to meet with the Chamber of Commerce too. So I went to Plan B. We'll start with a letter and see if we can continue this program for the year because I'd really like to see it go on. So that's an update for STARS. The nominations, I know it sounds early, but I opened it back up just so it's there because we'd like to start having someone starting in September. I too went to the pancake fundraiser and it was so good to see such the community support. And I've said for a long time, oh, I don't like pancakes. I'm like, well, just try one again. And I was pleasantly surprised. I'm like, yum. So I was excited. The library rebrand tour, also agree with the rest of the team here. It was so good to see so many community members out there and kids and just everyone having such a good time at the library. I mean, it was cool to have a block party. So that part was pretty cool. And then just a shout out that I saw in the paper, if other people didn't see it, Abigail Quintero from Wells won the Congressional Art Competition and got to go to Washington, D.C. So shout out to her. That's pretty amazing. And I think that's it.
All right. Thank you. And I will just add a couple of things. Our district uses Donors Choose. And today only, if you look up a teacher on Donors Choose in Elko County School District, they will get a 50% boost to their donation. So if you have wanted to help a teacher out and use Donors Choose, today would be a great day to do that because there will be a 50% boost to that. And I will just echo that I would also like to see the discussion about transportation for Ms. Glasscock and all of those students in that area discussed on an agenda. And as the 4-day school week is definitely a hot topic, and I know Mr. Anderson's going to address it, I will just say, no, it is not possible to do it in a couple weeks. Teachers and staff have been asked to make lots of really fast changes over the last couple of years, and I don't think that amount of stress this year is anything to ask anyone to do. But I would like to see the discussion started so that we can get a lot of input from everybody in all the communities. So I'd like to see that on a future agenda as well. In fact, I will just say the next agenda, I'd like to see that so that we can get that discussion started. And with that, we will move on to item 5.1, our superintendent's report.
If I can interject for just a moment, I'm so sorry. As I was looking across the audience when I was thanking Julie for being there, I apparently put her and Ray together. So Julie Davis, not Julie Smith. So thank you, and I apologize.
All right, well, we will now move on to item 5.1, our superintendent's report.
I didn't even notice, Matt. So that's one you probably should have just let fly. Respect to Julie. Yeah. No, Julie is amazing. So yeah. And I also have already thanked her, but I asked Julie to go to that meeting for me today because we had some other stuff going on here. I also saw I was at library. That was pretty cool. Tammy, who kind of ran that event, is a big supporter of our schools, and she does a lot there with things all over the community, and so it was great to spend some time with her. And I guess there hasn't been a whole lot of opportunity since I've been up here to associate with the library or kind of work together, but I mean, any way that we can anything that's like in favor of kids learning and supporting literacy and providing resources for people is awesome. And so I love the rebranding they're doing, and I love that we have that, our kids have that resource. It was sad to listen to her talk to us about, I'm not gonna throw anyone under the bus, but a county nearby us that does not have a library and ought to have a library. And it was really, while I was sad for them, I was grateful that my family makes we make great use of that library. Our kids love it there, and so we're library kind of people, and so I'm glad we have it. And so, good event. Pancake breakfast was also awesome too. I haven't got like a full report on if they got what they needed out of it, but it was looking like they were well on their way and probably going to have what they need to be able to complete their project for at least that portion of the playground. So great community support out there. The majority of our directorship here at the district, I want to not looking for praise, but I just want to point out that we are very supportive of them as well. And a lot of them, including me, were there this weekend as well. So we're glad that went well for them. All right, some things from me. So number one, I mentioned that when I said I sent Julie to that meeting this morning, Matt. That was because we, for the last 2 days, yesterday and today, have had it was 2 solid days of training with our administrators here at camp at central office. In fact, in this room, this room looked very different like 3 hours ago. We got it back to normal pretty quickly after with a lot of help, but we had 2 full days of training where not only updates on odds and ends and kind of housekeeping, but full on professional development for our administrators in regards to bullying, cyberbullying, discrimination, competency-based learning, better using reports for testing so we can make sure our kids are getting targeted interventions, lots of great support for our administrators. And we do have, as I've kind of filled you in along the way, we've got 10 brand new administrators this year. We've got another dozen or so that have moved from one position to another. And so lots of new things for people to learn. And so we really, when I came here 3 years ago, we had this type of thing for, I want to say it was 1 day, maybe it was 2. I can't recall. But we've kind of lost that the last couple of years with COVID and turnover and things like that. So it was great to get everybody back together. Lots of gratitude on their end. Lots of, our schools are in good hands with the administrators that we have. We have some great people running our schools, and I know you knew that already, but I just want to confirm that it's a great group of people who are dedicated to our kids. So 2 great days of administrator training. I wish I could do more with them. I'm sure they are not sad about not having to sit in this boardroom for another 3 days of training, but we'll continue to build their capacity and grow them as administrators all throughout the year with our admin councils and trainings, that sort of thing. So we're going to keep that going. Our good leadership is paramount to the improvement of schools. And so we're going to keep making sure that's a priority. MGT told us that the week of September the 19th, they would be doing meetings. Stephen, am I good to read the dates that we talked about? Like we're pretty good there. Okay. So I have exact dates and times for communities. So I'm going to share those with you and you, everybody. So you know when they are. Those dates are, so Monday the 19th at 5:30 Mountain Time. We will be in West Wendover, or they will be in West Wendover for that meeting. Then the next day, Tuesday the 20th at 5:30 Mountain Time, they will be in Jackpot. And then when they're done in Jackpot, they're gonna head over to Wells, and that'll be 7 p.m. Pacific time in Wells. Be a busy day. And then Wednesday the 21st, something very similar. We're gonna have we'll be in Owyhee at 5:30 Mountain Time. Sorry to keep flip-flopping, but I want to make sure that's clear. So 5:30 in Owyhee. And then when they're done in Owyhee, they're gonna drive on back to Elko, and we'll hold the one in Elko, 7 p.m. local time, Pacific. And then the last 2 will be on Thursday the 22nd 5:30 Pacific in Carlin. And then when they're done in Carlin, 7:30 Pacific in Spring Creek. Locations TBD, but those are the times and the dates. We will definitely publish that. And Kayla, our communications specialist, will also be putting together promotional materials for this. Our schools will be reaching out to their local community leaders, their PTAs, that letting their teachers know that that's a great opportunity. We really, I sure hope we get good turnout at these meetings, because this is literally the opportunity for anyone who, even if it's just like a wish, right? Like, you may not think it's going to happen right away, but you can make a wish. That's what this is for. Let them know what are priorities for your schools and your community. And so that's this opportunity to have that in your community. Sometimes the outliers feel like they are outliers and they get forgotten. And every phase of the MGT process has been to go physically to their site, to their communities, to hear what they have to say, to see physically. And so we're going to continue to do that. So those are the dates, times. We'll remind you as we get closer to that.
CJ, I apologize. Are any of those able to be attended virtually?
Kayla, I mean, I think they're going to have them broadcast as well, but I honestly don't remember. I can ask. Do you remember?
Available on the internet purpose as those in-person.
Okay.
So if you attend session.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I'll double check to make sure whether or not those will be simultaneously virtual and in person. But yeah, that survey that comes afterward will serve that same function for them. Thank you, Kayla. All right. I'd like to introduce a few people to you, even though I haven't met them myself. I have their names in front of me and they're here with us today. So sitting right behind Kayla, we have three individuals. George Sears. Hi, George. George Sears is our recently hired general manager. Yes. Oh, all right. Welcome, George. So George Sears is the general manager, newly acquired general manager for SFE, which is our new food service provider. Next to George, we have Kim Roberts. Kim Roberts is new accounts support. So we are a new account and she's here to support us. A very specific title. It's not clever. It's exactly what you do. Thank you, Kim. And then the last next to Kim is Dustin Seymour, and he is our corporate area chef. So he's here to, my understanding is, help us get our feet off the ground and get things running and get us moving in the right direction. All right. I understood well. Not bad for never having met you, right? We'll officially meet later. Thank you for being here. So that's a few of our members of the SFE staff, and they've been nothing but awesome to work with since July, basically, when we started doing all this. So I really appreciate their fervor and their excitement about being in Elko County and tackling everything head on. So thank you very much. Glad to have you here. Yep. And then I guess the last kind of main thing I want to talk about is the 4-day conversation. So I got a lot of stuff written down. I'm just going to kind of paraphrase a lot of it, but to preface everything I say, I'm not giving you any opinion with any of this. This is factual stuff. I had the pleasure of existing in a 4-day environment as the principal of Wells for 2 years. So what I say about that comes from experience, and what I tell you about through here is just all factual stuff. I'm I've not been asked my opinion of a board member, whether I think this is a good idea or not. And until I'm asked that, I will leave my opinion out of it because I'm trying to be impartial. And this is a community decision. If the community, not if 4 people or if 20 people or if 30 people think it's a good idea, but if the community wants to do this, then and we're charged with doing that, then I'll make sure it happens. But I think people need to be aware of what goes into moving to 4-day. Okay. So just a handful of things, because I tried to make a really good list, and I'm sure I'm missing some things, but kind of some major ones. So Teresa, you mentioned a little while ago that there's no way this is happening in a few weeks, right? And what I want to say, and I've been asked, why not? Why can't it happen that fast? What sort of things have to take place? Why can't we just turn on a dime and wave a wand and we're 4-day schools? Okay. So here's just some things that would need to be done. And the type of timeline you might expect for some of those things at like a bare minimum. So a lot of language in our master, and this one isn't like a huge inconvenience, but it takes time. A lot of the language in our master agreements with both ECTA and EXO contain a lot of language that is specific to 4-day versus 5-day and what types of contracts people have. So we would have to amend all of our master agreements for those schools that would change. So that's one element. Again, not a major thing. Natasha's here and so is Michelle. But we would have to convene with them and work on how that would go. And then those have to get approved by their organizations and that sort of thing. Next up, quite a laborious process is our contracts for all the teachers that serve in those, that work in those schools. Central office would have to, we produce individual contracts for everybody, all of the certified staff that work for us. So that would require us to produce a new contract for every employee and have those signed and returned. That usually is a multi-week process and just getting that done for each school. The next thing can't be done until that is done, and that is payroll. When you move from 5-day school to 4-day school, your length of your contract moves from 181 or 84. Okay, thanks. We have so many different length contracts. So a 184 down to a 156. Is that 6? Okay, thank you. I feel like I should know that off the top of my head, but I don't. 180s to 150s, right? We got to change that. So when you do that, every employee's contract then has to be recalculated, because now we're dividing whatever number by whatever number. And I know it sounds like, oh, well, that's easy. Just boom, 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 and you're done. But it's a lengthy process that people have to manually punch in those numbers. And so it totally affects how payroll would be able to pay our staff. Typically, when we do that process for like when we ended last year going into this year, we begin doing that in about April. And we really do our very, very best to get it done by the end of May. So it's a 6+ week process. Now that's for the whole district, right? So we wouldn't be talking about doing that for the whole district, but it takes time. And every single one of those is done individually. State approval is required. We, back in April, I want to say maybe that first meeting in April, we had Josh Farmer, who I labeled at that time as our calendar wizard, which I've been made fun of for since then. Josh puts those together and he gathers information from schools about their start times, their end times, the number of days, when the holidays are. Those calendars are put together and they have to be approved by the state. So any alteration of any kind to what has been approved does require resubmitting and waiting on approval from the state before we could make that move. Technically, you can do that, but it's not normal. You kind of submit your calendars for the next year and you move forward with it. Which is why if you were to look through board agendas from when Wells became a 4-day school, when Wendover became a 4-day school, when Jackpot became a 4-day school, when Carlin became a 4-day school, you would probably find that it was usually the months of September, October, November when those items were on the agenda, when they got passed, and then the remainder of that school year was used to start to move all these pieces to get that ready for the next year so we could submit all that in a timely manner. This one actually made my brain hurt when I thought about it because it's only a year that I left the site as a principal, but I still remember all the things I had to do. Every site has a master schedule, and those master schedules very much are different, whether you're a 4-day school or a 5-day school. It's not just about the number of days, it's based on your staffing, your student enrollment, your course offerings, the length of your day, which would change when you change schedules, transportation for the outlying, for outlying areas. Sometimes that's an equation, but it definitely affects our transportation in town and in Spring Creek. It would essentially, it impacts every piece of a master schedule. Typically, it's usually about, and I've got a bunch of principals over here, it's about February or March when we start working on a master schedule for the next school year. And we are updating it all throughout the summer. So to flip a master schedule in a couple of weeks would be a big ask of our site administrators. Additionally, every single student has an individual schedule, and that is built individually in Infinite Campus. And so to change school would also require changing every single student's schedule after the master schedule is sorted out. So that's another site administrator / counselor / registrar nightmare that would ensue once we did that. Matt, you mentioned a concern with transportation. Obviously, changing the days and the length of the days would impact our transportation schedules and routes. That can be sorted out at this point in the year where we are now. Bus drivers are getting their final training. They're learning their routes as they currently exist so that on day one, they're not staring at a piece of paper while they drive. They are learning what their route is. And so we would not only would transportation have to redo all of that, but then that would require all of our drivers to because inherent in learning your route is the timing and all of that. So that's part of it. Real big picture concern, and the same would go for food service as well, and I'll get to food service in a moment, but the way and this was brought up, I think, when Spring Creek proposed this originally, is our drivers, there's a sentiment that we would lose like a lot of them because not only is it a reduction in hours because you're driving 4 days instead of 5, like it's still the same number of routes, you still drive the same route, but it's 4 days instead of 5. So whatever routes you had, how much hours you had over a 5-day period, it's now being reduced to a 4-day period. And not only would that be a reduction in work for them and in pay, but if that puts someone below part-time status, they no longer are benefited employees either, in which case, there would potentially be the opportunity for someone to say, sayonara, I'm going to go get a benefited job. So concern from transportation for sure on that standpoint. And then the same would go for any employees of food service that are ours, because some of them are SFE employees and some are Elko County employees, but from a benefit standpoint, the same would apply to them, and the reduction in hours and that all applies to them as well. And then, I don't want to say this is not our problem because it's not necessarily, but it is a consideration we have to make as we are part of a larger community. And if we make a change like this, that is going to impact a lot of other entities within the city. So to consider, not only to consider what impacts it might have on them, but to be considerate of how much time it would take them to adapt to something like this as well. Which brings me to my processes that we usually follow for something like this. Because the process is not usually, I have an idea, we really think this is a great idea, let's do it in a month. The processes typically are, and these are recommendations. I mean, you could turn around right now and say, we want on the agenda next time. And I could say, okay, and we're voting on it, right? Like you could do that. But let me fill you in on and Ira and Teresa, you've been through this before. I'm going to fill the rest of you in on certain things that typically would happen between someone having the idea and a vote happening. So you as a board would want to consider, very importantly, as you've learned from your board trainings, first and foremost, always, is this, who is this decision about? Is this decision about kids? Is it about adults? Is it about both? Does it benefit both? Does it harm one? Does it harm the other? You need to think about what is the impetus for this and why are we even talking about this? Kind of to your point, Matt, of what you said earlier about the agenda, about the policy items, right? Why are we spending time talking about something that we don't necessarily need to spend our time talking about, right? So is this something that we definitely need to spend our time talking about? And I'm not saying it is or it isn't. In fact, I will. It is. We do need to talk about this. But we need to think about who it's going to impact and who it's for. Is this for kids or is this for someone else? I mentioned earlier, what impact is this going to have on different parts of our community? I won't spend any more time on that. Skip a few of those. Typically, there would be a lot of surveying done, surveys. Maybe that's the better word, not surveying, but surveys completed where what percent of the school community has been surveyed? How many are the primary participants in the survey parents or are they staff? Or what are the results of the surveys? How many different ways and opportunities were given for people to participate? So really making an effort to get kind of as much feedback as you can. For example, when West Wendover was approved, they had over 50% of the families represented in their school contributed and voiced their opinion. And of those 50% that contributed, over 75% were in favor of it, right? So we have more than half people participating and 3/4 of that half were in favor, right? That's pretty representative of the community. And in a place like Elko or Spring Creek, there's a lot of people in this community. There's a lot of families that we would have to consider. And are we getting a good enough representation to make that decision? A lot of those other pitches that communities made had letters of support, like lots and lots and lots of letters of support that would also be, proportional to the community, right? And do they represent the community as a whole? Again, who are they from? What parts of the community are they from? Is this just from a handful of people in one school, or is this, the whole community speaking? Have we, something we haven't done, to my knowledge anyway, as I look back through board agendas, is back when Wells, on and on, all the schools that have done it at this point, there was supposed to be a check-in on what are the results of doing this? Has student achievement got better, got worse? Is attendance any better or worse? Because what you'll hear in these pitches is, it's going to be better because of this. It's going to be better because of that. Has it been better, right? And the same concept goes, have we reviewed studies? You can find any study that's going to say it's great, and you can find any study that says you hate your kids if you do this. So like finding a good representation, and that sort of thing would be kind of not only the burden of the people who are pitching the idea, but also of us to do our research. People who've done this before have held multiple town hall type meetings where people can come. Maybe they didn't get a survey, or they would rather not participate in a survey, but they'd like to come and give comment on it and let you know just how great it would be for them or just how awful it would be for them. So to hold multiple opportunities of those so people can be heard. When this decision was made for other schools, there was the Superintendent's Advisory Committee. So was it 2 of you were appointed to that, I think, back in January? I don't remember who the 2 were. Susan was one of them. Susan, we just get to work together all the time. That is a committee that you asked me at that time, like, what's this for? Who's on it? What does it do? At that point, I was very fresh on the job, and Mr. Walls saved me and came in and said, that's for second order changes, CJ. And a second order change is anything that is a drastic shift from what you are currently doing. So that is a time when you would convene the Superintendent's Advisory Committee to have a review of all of the information that has been heard, surveys, town hall meetings, board meetings, all the above. And then that committee would look through and they would make a decision to advise the board on how to proceed. And then at that point, it would be a good idea for the board to make a decision. That's my recommendation on a process or ideas for part of a process, like that there should be quite a bit of thought put into this. And very importantly, I can't express it enough. And this is kind of why it's a challenge with the bigger the community gets, when you're trying to make this decision, is gaining a representative amount of feedback from the community. Because if you recall the attendance at our budget forum, if you recall attendance at when we were doing capital, when we were trying to get the bond passed, if you recall a lot of our meetings we've done, I don't know, would you consider that representative of our community? No, of course not, right? When making this decision, you want to have representation from the community. So again, I feel like the way I'm saying this makes it sound like I'm not in favor of this, and I don't want that to be the tone, but I do want you to understand that there is a lot that goes into this. And I only know that not because I've gone through it, but because I've done my homework into what goes into this. And the homework says there's a lot. So might be my longest superintendent's report ever, but you wanted to know, I also appreciate the stuff because I've got the letters from the teachers too. I've seen the Facebook posts. I've seen the comments in the Facebook posts. I've heard from people individually. There's pros, there's cons, just like anything else. And my job under, I don't know if it's exactly in there, but if you were to look in policy CBA or whatever, yeah, I think that was the one which we amended today. I'm here to advise you and help you understand the processes on making a decision like this. And so I'm doing that. I don't know which number on that list it was, but I'm doing that right now. And in the end, it would be a decision you have to make based on what we find out and what recommendations come from the advisory committee. But yeah, there's a lot to do for this. So at least in my recommendation, there's a lot that should be done.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Yeah. I'm not going to ask for more comments from you, but any comments from the board? Just kidding.
We did hear a presentation on and I went back through old board agendas and I couldn't find it, but we did hear a presentation on like a year later, what the results were on enrollment, absences, how many subs they had to hire. And it would have had to have been Wells because those other schools haven't. A year later would have been right square in the middle of COVID. So we did hear a presentation on what the results were.
Cool.
And in Jackpot, when they presented it to us, it was the parents, the community that presented it to us. It wasn't the school necessarily. They coordinated, but it was pretty much the community that presented it.
Which is an important point, Ira, because in the end, like the school is supposed to be, the school is a service to the community. We are there to educate the kids, to meet the needs of the community, whether that's through food or through whatever, right? Like there's a million ways our schools meet the needs of kids in their community. And so if that's the need of the community as a whole, then the school is there to support that. And that's kind of what I noticed in looking through the process too. You would start to see letters of support from the principals maybe of those schools once they had all that stuff back. Like, hey, this is like when I mentioned Wendover, their numbers were overwhelmingly in favor. So now the principal says, yep, we're on board. Let's do this. This is what our community wants and needs. And we're here to make it happen. And that's about the time that that a school would probably jump in. Doesn't have to be that way, but that kind of looking through the processes, that's kind of the way it's gone.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board or guidance?
Mr. Anderson, you indicated the results of student data. Who analyzes that student data from the existing 4-day schools? As I mentioned, a good majority of the 4-day schools have not had a quote unquote normal school year since they started that. So where is the data and who analyzes that, and how quickly can that data be presented in some reasonable form back to the board?
The data
and the
would
community.
the data would be easy to come up with, right? It's just running state scores, it's running map testing scores, it's running attendance data. But as you indicated, we haven't had normal, Wells didn't even get through their 2-year cycle before that got interrupted. I was the principal of Wells when they were supposed to report after being approved 2 years later. And the meeting that we were about to have is when everything got shut down. So, and then the other ones have all been since then, right? So what we could get the data, but what you're going to find is the attendance data is going to be horrendous, right? Because all attendance was horrendous. The achievement data is going to be not as good because there was a year we didn't even do the achievement tests, right? And then the next year it was like, we're doing them, but I don't really count, right? So, I mean, we can get you that stuff, but it's unfortunately it's not reliable data is how we would phrase that.
Thank you. And depending on the direction the board would like to take, if we do move forward in evaluating this, I think in addition to the surveys that need to be done, it may be prudent for us to survey the parents of the schools that have done the 4-day to see if their expectations were met. Obviously, I'm not expecting 50% of West Wendover parents to reply and 75% to be in favor of, because when there's an action needed, then there's more involvement. Yep. They have that. However, it would be nice perhaps to say that or to see that. And I also want to just throw out that, yes, student data is great to see where scores were and where attendance was and all that other stuff, but a data point does not necessarily say that our students are healthier because of that. And I want to just make it very clear that for my purposes, a drop in test scores does not, for me, necessarily mean that it was a failed project, because the well-roundedness of the student is what I'm looking at. And I don't subscribe to you have to get this point or you have to have an advancement in order to be a better person. So I want to throw that out there because that's something that is concerning. It shouldn't be just, is there an upward progression?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Not to say that scores are not important, kids. You still need to do as good as you can.
Yeah, I totally agree. The education of the whole child is what we do. We don't just try to get better test scores. And so, test scores are just an easy measure that we can run a report on. The other stuff is a little more challenging to assess the effectiveness and, like you said, the health of the child, that sort of thing. So yeah, I don't disagree with what you're saying there.
All right.
If I can add one more thing in, you would want to make sure that whatever, because you were mentioning about the test scores, and it's not the only thing. You would want to make sure that whatever decisions you're making also align with whatever potential goals you would be making. Because if on one side we're saying we're going to go for it, we're not all that concerned about test scores. A lot of people aren't going to want to hear about your goals about a test score. So what is important to you and what are we going for and what's the purpose of our schools? So.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair, on this item, I think that we need to continue to have this. I believe you had mentioned something about moving forward with the 4-day discussion. I don't know that it needs to be an agenda action item, but yes, I would wholeheartedly support moving forward with this discussion and perhaps putting into place what the process, what the timeline of processes, what the steps might look like to then see if the board truly wants to take this on, if I may be so bold as to say.
Is it easier to be an agenda item so that you can discuss it? Or if it's not an agenda item, then people just come with public comment? Am I making sense? I mean,
I would say we could do it one of two ways. We could do it as a presentation prior to the public comment, like we received that presentation from MGT tonight. And anyone who would like to come and be part of that presentation could do that in that format, or we could put it as an action item of discussion, not necessarily decision on implementing, but an action item where we say we will go ahead and continue to bring this back to us. Let's see what you have to say. I think we could look at that and decide what would be best. Is there thoughts from the board? Are there thoughts from the board on the best way to do that? Because we definitely have a lot of interest and a lot of
Yeah.
people that would like to talk about it, and I would love for them to have the opportunity to do so.
I would agree that an information item would be fine for us to put on the board or on the agenda. It can be a multi-agenda or multi-meeting informational process, and just have an open item that says we're going to get information back from this without taking action on, yep, this is, we're making that decision. And the only reason I say not having it as an action item is because I don't know that we have enough information to be able to take action at this time. And that's the only caution that I have. And I think that we could do a combination of what Teresa had mentioned, having a presentation from a group, whether that's a group of parents or a group of students or a group of community members, whatever that may, having that presentation in advance, and then still having an item that is on the agenda that says, we're now going to hear information from the student data. We're now going to have information from what the process of the survey looks like, or what the, where we are on that timeline, on where we're having multiple town hall meetings. I think we can have those updates, and perhaps it's just simply built into the superintendent's report. But I just want to make sure that this is a big item that we need to make sure that we have time to go through it.
Yeah, and I didn't mean for it to be action item, just agenda, so that everyone has a chance to communicate what their needs are.
Yeah, if you look at the previous instances of this, typically there is a board meeting where there's a presentation or actually, sorry, there's discussion, and then followed by a presentation, followed by voting. Sometimes that happened over the course of a couple of months, and sometimes it happened from maybe the first meeting of the month to the second meeting of the month. But yeah, it was usually a multi situation.
Well, without taking any action at the moment, as this is a non-action item, it sounds like from the board, everyone would like to discuss this at a future meeting. And so we can, perhaps Mr. Anderson and I can convene and discuss what would be best as we discuss, or as we receive input from the public on how they would like to present this.
And something, because I know we've all been contacted as a group, and some of you have been contacted individually. A really great piece of advice for those who are pushing for this would be to organize yourselves and decide on a committee that's going to do a lot of the steps that I talked about, and take responsibility for collecting all that information, people's feelings, responses, getting support. Because in the end, we could drag this out over months if we just, like, if people just send us a letter here and there and come in for public comment, like this could go on forever. So the reason this has moved forward in other places is because people from the community came together, they formed a committee, they grabbed everything, they put a presentation together, and they gave it to the board. And so that's probably an essential component. I'm speaking to like everybody and nobody at the same time. Like anyone can do it. I don't have a preference for who does or doesn't. Like, they're welcome to do it, but it should be an organized effort as opposed to the occasional message that comes from one person or another.
Okay, I think we have talked that one over quite a bit. We will move on to item 6.1, which is approval of the accounts payable.
I move to approve the accounts payable for August 9th.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? All right, all in favor of approving the accounts payable August 9th, 2022, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and that motion carries. We also have the Wells Rural accounts payable, and I will disclose that I have a family member who is employed by Wells Rural, so I will be abstaining.
I move to approve Wells Rural accounts payable for August 9th, 2022.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? And chair abstains, but the motion carries. Item 7.1 is a final opportunity for public comment. All right. Shannon, is your mic on? Little green light.
You all have a copy of this, so I probably don't need to go through and finish reading it. But I did want to make a correction on the second page, second paragraph, out in the middle. It says with 13 students at, and it says 9,267. That should be 9,633. And it provides Elko County School District. It says 120,471. It should be 125,229. And it's not just state funding, that would be local, state, and federal combined. I will say the last paragraph, though. Thank you for this opportunity to communicate this need to you. We appreciate the many hours this board and administration put into looking out for the best interest of our children. You serve a very challenging and thankless job, but we want to thank you today for all that you do.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a comment?
I forgot to say one thing, so I'm going to enter it as public comment right now.
Mr. Anderson.
Or maybe I don't have to do as public comment. Maybe you just let me say it. You all got to spend August 9th with me at this board meeting. Happy anniversary to my wife, Wendy. This is our 17th anniversary. I apologize to her already for being here instead, but it's awesome to be with all of you on my anniversary. And I know she's watching because she's a crazy person and watches every board meeting. I've told her she doesn't have to, but anyway, happy anniversary, 17 years. She's put up with me for a long time. Hopefully I get a couple more out of this.
Yes,
She's pretty great.
Happy anniversary. And Mrs. Anderson, I did my part to get him home early.
I actually was probably the longest winded here today, so that's my bad.
All right. Well, happy anniversary to you and your wife.
Thank
And
you.
with that, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for coming and have a wonderful evening.